Hello, everyone. Shalom. Marhaba. Welcome, everybody, to the annual conference of Hasoub, and I really feel privileged to be here today. Really impressed by what Hasoub and the community is doing, and on the great momentum that we see in the Arab high-tech community. I recently looked into some reports from Tzofen and found some of the data quite encouraging. So even though we're very far from where we need to be, it's great to see that we went up from about 1,600 or so Arabs graduates in the high-tech studies in 20 years to about 6,500 in just every year in the last few years. We also see great representation of women in tech and in the studies. And perhaps most importantly, we see the momentum that we see in STEM, which is the future. And I think we're very far from where we need to be, but this is really kind of a good momentum to see. And the important thing about change is that it doesn't need to be linear, it can be exponential. So really pleased to see that, but of course, there's a lot that we can and should be doing. Talking about STEM, when we think about kind of the next generation and what we should be doing, this actually rings a bell on a program that we're very proud of, that we've been running at Google for over 12 years now. Started out in 2008 by two engineers, Daniela and Michal. They set up to see how can we encourage girls around the countries to study computer science and STEM in general. And what we've seen is the growth and the impact of that. What has started out with just a few schools is now touched already thousands of girls around the countries. It became a global program, so also encouraging girls to go to technology and science in places such as Japan, Korea, Madrid, São Paulo, Warsaw, and more. And of course, we have students from all over the country, from both the Jewish and Arab communities joining that. And I remember when we started the program, people asked me, "So why are you investing in this kind of age? You're not hiring high schoolers." And our thought was, well, we need to also invest for the long term, and really happy that now we already have a few engineers at Google who are actually graduates of this program. So they were participating about a decade ago as students. They were inspired. They chose to do that. So I mentioned that because I think the inspiration and the opportunity that we have for the next generation is hugely important. And it's great to see the programs that we're seeing in the Arab community in general. Talking about community, obviously, when we are thinking about technology and what we do in Israel, we are developing technology. We are a site of over 1,500 engineers developing products and technologies which are used by billions of people worldwide. But we're very proud and cherish our work with the community. So in addition to Mind the Gap, I will mention Campus Tel Aviv, Google for Startup Campus, which started about 8 years ago, and ever since had one of the goals and priorities for campus was to see how to support all the ecosystem. And this is about with the Arab engineers, with the ultra-Orthodox, with women engineers, and entrepreneurship programs. And Hasoub is one of our partners for a few years now. So really pleased about all the initiatives that we had with Hasoub. This is kind of a picture for just before COVID, when we can still be at the same time. But what we've seen is we had over 70 Hasoub events, meetups since 2016, and we were really privileged to host the recording of the first Arabic-speaking podcasts by Hasoub, and also, of course, supporting the annual event. So very pleased to be here again. And in 2021, we are planning to work with Hasoub on piloting a Founders Club, bringing the best of Google to groups of the Arab founders. Of course, we're also working with our organizations such as Tzofen, Hybrid, and Meet program and boot camps and more. Now, I know this conference is about the new normal, and these kind of pictures are kind of reminding us of something that we took for granted just a few months ago, and we are looking forward to go back and get back to normal. But until we do need to think about how the new normal actually looks like. 2020 actually moved our campus activities moved from kind of the gathering that we could all see each other in person to this new experience that we are actually having right now. And interestingly enough, I heard that the quote of the year is "You are on mute." So obviously, with this new normal, we learn to appreciate the importance of being together. But I will highlight a few of the kind of silver lining of technology as it relates to this very difficult year for so many people. And technology really enabled us to connect. It enabled us, even though we can all appreciate the advantage of getting together and being in the same place and having a face-to-face conversation. But the fact that we can actually communicate over video conference, obviously, is something that is hugely important. Not only that, just before COVID, we actually had a pilot for a program called Connecting Community, where we looked into how can we move some of our activities online in order to be even more inclusive, to enable communities that cannot come physically to campus space to participate online. And in a way, when we all are all online, actually there are these opportunities to connect more people, to be able to find new ways to connect in a more efficient way. And I'm really excited about the opportunities that we have, both with the improvement of technologies, but also in ways that we learn how to operate in a more hybrid way. So I think we're not there yet, and currently we're mostly feeling the pain. But I think we do see some progress on many areas. For example, hospitals are talking with people over video conference. This is an acceleration that probably for some of them would be, it would take another decade or two before they would do that. And now it's becoming kind of the new normal, which I'm sure some of it is going to stay even when we can all come to the same room in the same place. And just a few days ago, actually, we participated in an ultra hack by Prof. And again, we can have more participation actually on that, even though, of course, it's still not as effective as being in the same room in the same place. So I'd like to spend a few minutes to talk about technology in the new normal and its role. And as I mentioned, it already has an important role to actually connect us, to keep us, to enable us to work. I mean, we are working, for example, we've been working from home since March. But the fact that we can actually keep on working and keep supporting the world with technologies and products, even with the constraints on COVID, is I think it's pretty amazing. But technology, of course, has a role also to help out with the pandemic itself. Now, of course, we are all looking into now the vaccines, which are coming up, and we're very hopeful they're going to show the change back to the old normal. And obviously, the progress in vaccines is unparalleled due to technology on so many levels. But I'd like to also touch on some other ways in which technology is helpful in so many different ways and sometimes life-saving. Quite naturally, when COVID started, one of the things that many people wanted to do is to look for information. And obviously, when something happens, people turn to Google to search for information about it. What we see here is the chart called Google Trends that shows the popularity of search queries over time. In this case, it shows comparison between three types of queries. One is around Corona, one is around news, which is one of the most popular searches. People are searching for news in order to read about it. And similarly, weather is the kind of stuff that people are checking in every day. Most of the popular searches that you can imagine would not be even visible on this chart because these are really popular queries. Now, as we can see, late January, we started seeing a peak in interest because this is where about the time that the virus started spreading in other countries. In fact, at the end of January, that's where the WHO, the World Health Organization, declared it as an emergency, as a global emergency. And that's about the time that we see the small peak. The later peak comes up later in March, where this really became a pandemic at scale. Now, at the same time that the WHO declared it a global emergency, our team launched a feature called SOS Alert for COVID. You can see it on the right-hand side. This is essentially providing the basic information for people searching for information about COVID-19. Initially, it showed the authoritative information coming from WHO, and this was quite significant because we started seeing all this kind of misinformation out there and rumors. It was very important for people to actually get the right information from authoritative information. Very quickly, it expanded to show information from various countries. So obviously, every country has its own health organizations with guidelines to people. And by now, of course, we have a very rich experience in multiple languages where people are actually looking for information about anything from symptoms to statistics, which are now pretty popular. That's one of our kind of proxies to see how things are going. And being able to help people during a time that they're looking for all this kind of information with just the right one was paramount. And we practically actually had teams, started by teams in Israel and working with teams around the world, pretty much around the clock in order to make sure that we have the right information to people, because this is information that can keep them safe. Now, the reason we could have this kind of information in time in January is due to a platform or technology that we have, which we call crisis response. It's a team that we lead globally out of Israel, with teams in other places, such as in California, in India, and New York, and other places, where a few years ago, 4 years ago, we launched a feature in search called SOS Alert, because the need for actionable information during crisis is something that we see again and again. Every time there's a wildfire, there are floods, earthquake, terror attack, or any other events out there, hurricane coming, storm, people are turning to Google to look for information because they want to know what they should be doing, how to remain safe. And to address that, a few years ago, we launched SOS Alerts, which essentially provides information about what's going on, where is it on a map, what should I be doing, is there any guidance from authorities, any phone numbers that I should be aware of. And since launching it, and whenever, again, there's something happening, you can see in Google Trends this peak of interest because people are looking for information about what they should be doing. What we see here is kind of just a map of some of the activations that we had for SOS Alerts. As we can see, crises are in a global scale. They are everywhere. They are very diverse, of various types. And we had over a few hundreds of such SOS Alerts, and actually many thousands of what we call public alerts, which are connecting directly to sources of crisis. And by doing that, we could actually fulfill the need for information. And by having this platform, we could actually serve also the COVID-19 with a lot of hard work, because this is, of course, a crisis of different scale. So the technology has the role to actually provide information to help people during crisis and when they need information in order to help them to take decisions that can help them safe. And what we can see is that we have the potential to go even deeper. For example, as we worked on crisis, we learned that one of the most devastating crises, which are floods, we actually don't have the right information. So floods are responsible for over 6,000 fatalities per year. And the problem with floods is that if you knew that a flood is coming, it's very easy to prevent those fatalities. You can just evacuate. But if you don't know about it, then it comes as a surprise. And just last year, I was with my team in Bihar in India, and we saw this village that was just washed out overnight with a few people drowning, and many more would be unless for this fellow standing next to me. His name is Rakesh, and he, along with two of his friends, actually personally saved a few people during that night. So he's a hero, and the first responders are the heroes. But if you could only give them the information a little bit heads up that the flood is coming their way, actually this could be preventable. So to that end, a couple of years ago, we actually looked into what can we do? Can we use machine learning and AI and cloud technology in order to do something about it, in order to have some predictions? And as it turns out, we can do with a lot of simulations. We could actually, and cloud computing and a lot of using pretty deep combination of fluid dynamics and physics and machine learning and other technologies, we actually managed to get to the stage that in partnership with India, where we're getting some information about the situation of rivers, we can have a prediction about where floods are going to be with 90% accuracy. And by doing that, we could actually send out alerts in real time, actually not in real time, before it actually happens, a few hours before the floods. Here's where the flood is going to be, even how deep the water is going to be. What we see here on the left is also a picture I took with my own phone on the ground, where we could compare actually the situation, the predictions to what's happening. And this is just one example out of many. By now, we already cover all of India and good part of Bangladesh, sending over almost 40 million warnings to people at risk during the last monsoon season alone, and helping out over 200 million people who are at flood risk. In addition to floods, we can use technology to have alerts for earthquake and even wildfires. Just recently, we kind of showed that we provided some hourly update about the perimeter of a fire in California, and there have been dozens of fires in California just in the last few months. And every hour, this is kind of the contour of the fire can be shown based on satellite imagery. And this kind of closes a circle because my personal interest in the notion of how to use technology to help out with crisis started not far from where many people live. This is a picture I took with my own phone. This was a Nexus 1 10 years ago from our office in Haifa of the wildfire in Carmel. And during that fire, I was actually unable to find any useful information until I actually got the phone number set up by the police. And then I asked my team to actually put it as a result for people searching for information at search. This was in a way the first time that we put some crisis-related information, crisis response information in search. And we've gone a long way from there, which is all about how to use technology to help out people during crisis. So this is an example of how to use technology during crisis. I will mention that there's a lot of more opportunity to work with the community with what we call AI for social good, where we can work both internally as well as externally on many topics on crisis-related or health and many other topics, including now we're looking into how to work and with startups around the world. So this is an example for an AI Impact Challenge where we had 2,600 startups and organizations working, submitting. They're all doing work of using technology in order to help out people in times of need of various types. And now with the UN Sustainable Development Goals, there are opportunities to also leverage a lot of the community work in order to help out with technology to many aspects which are societal problems that we want to address. I just want to close and again mention the opportunity to use technology is really something that we need to think about as an ecosystem play. There are many aspects there. There are the VCs, the governments, the startups, the big companies, the small companies, the innovators, the entrepreneurs. Everybody listening to this conference has the opportunity to be part of this ecosystem. And I really encourage you all to do that. I really want to see many and to hear more of what you are all going to be doing. And again, just to close, really excited to have this activity and see more people actually interested in joining the high-tech community. And perhaps it's appropriate to close with a nice clip that we had just a few months ago. Again, this was when we could still get into the same place. So I think you all familiar with this fellow. And let me play this, I think, very nice video clip, which hopefully you can enjoy.
את יודעת שיש היום יותר מ-6,000 סטארט-אפים בארץ, רק 1% מגיע מהחברה הערבית. לפני 5 שנים אנחנו חסוב, הבנו את גודל הפער ואת ההשפעות החברתיות והכלכליות שלו, והתחלנו לעבוד על מנת לקדם את נושא היזמות הטכנולוגית בחברה הערבית ולהכניס עוד אנשים מוכשרים לפייפליין היזמי. אנחנו בונים קהילות של מהנדסים ויזמים טכנולוגיים בערים הערביות. אנחנו גם עובדים עם סטודנטים בקמפוס לתת להם את הכלים, קשרים ושירים בשלבים מוקדמים בחיים כדי להכין אותם להיות הדור הבא של היזמים. אנחנו גם עובדים על הקמת תשתיות פיזיות שמודדות יזמות, וכיום עובדים על הקמת מרכז החדשנות בוואדי עארה.